So what do we do, right? I just spewed a lot of, basics of worker rights. But what do we do when these things are violated? Like I talked about, most of this stuff happens all the time across industries, across sectors. Obviously, low paying jobs are worse. Obviously, service and retail industry are really really heavily involved in a lot of these things. But when we see it happening, right now that we know our rights, what can we do? How can we advocate for ourselves? And the first step for advocating yourself and making positive change in your workplace is knowing and standing up for your rights, right? So the first step, like with almost everything, is educating yourself. Educating yourself and making a stand. There are government agencies, there are federal, state, and sometimes local workers' rights agencies that can investigate violations and enforce relevant labor laws. The exact nature of these agencies, and which one you should call, is really, really situational and location dependent, right? Government agencies can not only help you, but they can potentially help your coworkers. The one side effect of this is that it is often a very slow process, right? And so that's one thing that I always tell people when I'm talking to people about workers' rights and advocating for themselves, and filing a complaint with the Department of Labor, for example, is I always tell them it's it's a slow process. So they're going to have to understand that it's the government, so it's not going to move quickly. But it's real, even if you're quitting, right? Even if you're done and they've stolen your wages and you're not going to fight with them anymore and you're done, still file the complaint, right? Because while it may take months, it could get you those back wages. And maybe even more importantly, it can get your coworkers that are still stuck there. It can get past coworkers, right? Once one person files that wage complaint, they start digging. And all of a sudden, people who never even filed the complaint are getting redress. They're getting, justice. They're getting back pay and things like that. So I always, always, always encourage people, even if you're throwing in the towel, even if you're not going to go for private legal action, even if you're not going to stay in your workplace and fight, on your way out the door, file the complaint, right? Or maybe right before you walk out the door, file it while you're still an employee, and then, make your exit. But file it, right? Raise the issue, start the investigation, because in the long run, it could help you and it could help your coworkers, and it could help people that you never even knew who had been screwed over by that employer years before. It just opens a door that companies really don't want, right? They don't want to be investigated. They don't want auditors looking through their books and seeing what they're doing, especially if they know they're engaged in illegal activity, which most of them are aware that what they're doing is illegal. You can also take private legal action. Labor lawyers will often provide a free consultation and work on a contingency where they get the percentage of the winnings, right? A lot of times, because of the heavy, situational and location dependency of whether or not something's illegal or has crossed the threshold into a labor law violation, you really need advice, right? And labor law is one of those legal areas where they will often give you that advice for free, and they will often work where they'll say, I'll take X percentage if you win. So it's a little more accessible area of law oftentimes, because people who get into the worker side of labor law tend to want to help people, right? They don't want to say, well, I can't help you because you can't drop a $5,000 retainer for me, knowing that you're a minimum wage worker who was screwed over by McDonald's, right? They know you don't have that money, so they'll often take you on a contingency. Collective action, right? If you're staying, you do not need to be in a union, like I said earlier, to collectively advocate for yourself and organize for change in your workplace. This can go from collectively advocating and negotiating, around issues, like was mentioned on one of the previous slides, right? That you can actually go and, raise issues collectively or as individuals, to your employer and try to talk it out and try to come to a common agreement, to try to come to a settlement. You can do that, but you can also engage in slowdowns, right? You can work less effectively. You can take actions, and again, it's all really specific to your job and your conditions, but there's plenty of actions that you can take that can put pressure on your employer, to give concessions and to work with the employees to improve conditions, because if they don't, they're going to continue losing money. Now, you can get fired for these things, right? When you don't have the union protection, you can be fired for these things. But like I said, 49 out of 50 states are at will. So you can be fired for any reason, without reason. So remember, and this collective action can go as far as strikes, right? You can strike without a union. Again, it's a risk. They can fire you off day one of the strike and try to hire new people. But there are often times and situations where that's not possible, right? It may be a situation where your employer can't afford to not run for a day, a week, a month, months as they restaff. So a wildcat strike, it wouldn't technically be wildcat, because there's no wildcat strikes, are when strikes happen against the union leadership's vote. But it would be like an unorganized strike can happen, and they can be effective. Like any kind of a collective action, though, it really demands that you and your coworkers are unified, and that you're going to, really fight, stand together and hold the ground. Otherwise, you're only as strong as your weakest link, and it can all easily fall apart. And then again, the final step in all of this, in advocating yourself, and the one that we're not going to dive deep into tonight, is you can always organize a union, right? You have a right to organize a union. Like most labor rights and organizing, how this happens is really heavily situational and really location dependent. What I always tell people when talking about forming unions is step one is a soft count, right? Who's with you? Who's against you? Who do you not want to even ask, because they'll rat you out, right? But you can start getting your soft counts through conversations. And I used to work at a school that we only had 9 employees. And the main reason that I never tried to start a union at the school was over half of our employees most of the time were either family with the owner, or related, or in a relationship with the owner, a member of the owner's family, right? So when I've got 9 employees, but 5 of them are the owner's kids, and the owner's kids' spouses, I don't think I'm going to win that vote. So I can't really start the fight. In a different situation, I may be able to look at my 9-person, workplace and say, I've got 7 of us in the bag. Let's organize. Let's hold this union vote. Let's let the NLRB count it, and let's become an organized workplace.